DJ Hamp, Stampede, we in the building. Like, share, subscribe, tell a friend, and tell a friend. Hit that like button right now if you can. That helps the channel the most. I swear, this presidential race, I thought it was going to be a landslide, to be 100% honest with y'all. But apparently, the polls are much, much closer. Literally points in difference. From September, Kamala was up 2 points. Now, when they took the poll in terms of choice for president, if they had to vote right at this time, Trump is up 2 points. You can't make this up, man. Got to be a joke. The debate was what it was. Salute to everybody who watched it together. It was all 400 of us watching it live on This Might Be Risky live stream. We had a good time. Definitely listen to try to understand. Unfortunately, the takeaway from those 300 people, the consensus, not all, but the general consensus was that we didn't get much out of it. It was just Trump's debate not to lose, essentially. So many people were saying, hey, Kamala need to do something to start talking about her policies, how she actually feels, as opposed to trying to tap into emotions, meaning what is your plan? What are your policies? Seemingly nobody got a lot of that from the debate itself. I was surprised, though, however, where she's been doing these different interviews for sure. The platforms in which I saw her do the interviews on, I kind of expected. I was not, however, expecting the Fox News interview. So that one I got to give credit for. I've reviewed it just a bit, but I wanted to have an organic thought in real time while doing this live reaction. So it will be just that. Let's review it together. I'll give you my 2 cents. It's about 30 minutes long, but we'll see how far we can get through it, man. It's interesting. I'm telling you. First woman president, I never thought I would see it. President Obama, I never thought I would see it. But to be, I'm not even in here to say if she black, if she not, right? She got some type of something in her that ain't white. That's for damn sure. And she's a woman. Those two things I never put together to say, hey, it's 50-50 right now. Just days away. What is it? 18 days away? November 4th, I believe, is when we vote, if I'm not mistaken. Man. Like, share, subscribe, tell a friend and tell a friend. Hit that like button right now if you can. That helps the channel the most. Let's take a look at this, man.
Madam Vice President, thank you for the time.
Thank you. It's good to be with you, Brett.
You know, voters tell pollsters all over the country and here in Pennsylvania that immigration is one of the key issues that they're looking at this election. And specifically,
immigration is key. When he opened with this, I said, okay, we on to something. Because when I look at people who look like me, you know, black and brown specifically, and you look at these different sanctuary cities under this administration, largely those people are affected. Displaced from schools, different housing, the hotels. You know, you see a lot of the sanctuaries in democratic cities, which are largely minority. You know, Chicago, I mean, I've been watching a whole bunch of stuff on that. And as of recent, it has died down a little bit. Obviously, we have it in Colorado where migrants simply took over a building, an apartment building. And I'm seeing a lot of people that look like me being affected by what's happening here. So I'm glad he opened with this. Let's see how it goes.
the influx of illegal immigrants from more than 150 countries. How many illegal immigrants would you estimate your administration has released into the country over the last 3.5 years?
Well, I'm glad you raised the issue of immigration because I agree with you. It is a topic of discussion that people want to rightly have. And you know what I'm going to talk about.
Yeah, but
right now,
just a number. Do you think it's 1 million, 3 million?
Brett, let's just get to the point. Okay, the point is that we have a broken immigration system that needs to be repaired.
So your Homeland Security Secretary said that 85% of apprehensions.
I'm not finished. We have
it's a rough estimate of 6 million people have been released into the country. And let me just finish. I'll get to the question. I promise you.
I was beginning to answer.
And when you came into office, your administration immediately reversed a number of Trump border policies. Most significantly, the policy that required illegal immigrants to be detained through deportation, either in the U.S. or in Mexico. And you switched that policy. They were released from custody awaiting.
I must be honest. I'm glad that he didn't allow the interjection, right? I appreciate her acknowledging the fact that, okay, we understand this is hot. He's using possessive pronouns, your, right? He's not saying Biden, which is key, right? So the accountability is instantly there. Let's see what she does with it.
Trial. So instead, included in those were a large number of single men, adult men, who went on to commit heinous crimes. So, looking back, do you regret the decision to terminate Remain in Mexico at the beginning of your administration?
At the beginning of our administration, within practically hours of taking the oath, the first bill that we offered Congress, before we worked on infrastructure, before the Inflation Reduction Act, before the Chips and Science Act, before the bipartisan Safer Communities Act, the first bill, practically within hours of taking the oath, was a bill to fix our immigration system.
Yes, ma'am. It was called the U.S. Citizenship Act of 2021.
Exactly.
It was essentially a pathway to citizenship for the elite. Yes, ma'am.
May I finish responding, please? But you have to let me finish.
You
please.
had the White House and the House and the Senate,
and
they didn't bring up that bill.
I agree with her here, right? Like, she knows that there's a bill, so he named the bill. Let her say the thing and then retort or rebut or clarify once she's finished, right? That part I think could be much more seamless than it right now is. She's mid-sentence talking about the bill. He named the bill. All right, cool. Thank you for edification. Let her keep going, though. I kind of see that here.
Responding to the point you're raising, okay, and I'd like to finish.
Yes, ma'am.
We recognized from day one that, to the point of this being your first question, it is a priority for us as a nation and for the American people. And our focus has been on fixing a problem. And from day one, then, we have done a number of things, including to address our asylum system and put more resources, getting more judges, what we needed to do to tighten up penalties and increase penalties for illegal crossings, what we needed to do to deal with points of entry between border entry points. That's the work we did, and we worked on supporting what was a bipartisan effort, including some of the most conservative members of the United States Congress, to actually strengthen the border. That border bill would have put 1,500 more border agents at the border, which is why I believe the Border Patrol agents supported the bill. It would have allowed us to stem the flow of fentanyl coming into the United States, which is a scourge affecting people of every background, every geographic location in our country, killing people. It would have allowed us to put more resources into prosecuting transnational criminal organizations, which I have done as the Attorney General, former Attorney General of a border state.
Madam Vice President, a couple of things.
Prosecuted trafficking of drugs, guns, and human beings. And Donald Trump, but let me just finish.
6 Democrats voted against that bill.
Learned about that bill and told them to kill it because he preferred to run on a problem instead of fixing a problem. And in this election.
So here's the one thing that I'm trying to understand, and maybe in the comments you guys can certainly help me out. If there was a bill in place, although you didn't like it or agree with it holistically, but it did something to a problem that you agree was an issue that you guys recognize, which is why it's one of the first things the Biden administration did, then why not let the bill stand until you get yours in order to see if it gets passed, as opposed to just repealing it and now we have nothing? Right. And so seemingly this bill didn't get passed, but it was a priority, but people voted against it. And obviously we don't have the bill up to dissect it. But she's alleging that Trump pushed for it to get annulled, essentially. However, it was just stated that 6 Democrats voted against the bill. It also seemingly contradicts what was happening with this migrant crisis in these sanctuary cities. So if you had a bill to stop people from coming in, which included the stop of fentanyl coming into the country, then how are we also providing sanctuary at the same time? That seems to be contrary. But let's listen.
This is rightly a discussion that the American people want to have. And what they want are solutions, and they want a president of the United States who's not playing political games with the issue,
I hear you,
but actually is focused on fixing it.
6 Democrats voted against that bill. It would have allowed 1.8 million illegal immigrants into the country a year. A lot of conservatives had a problem with it. These are the 6 Democrats. But more importantly, back to the original premise, Jocelyn Nungari, Rachel Morin, Laken Riley, they are young women who were brutally assaulted and killed by some of the men who were released at the beginning of the administration, well before a negotiated bipartisan bill. Former President Clinton actually referred to Laken Riley Sunday, campaigning for you in Georgia, saying if those men had been properly vetted, Laken Riley probably would not have been killed. So if it wouldn't have happened, this is well before any negotiation. This is well before Donald Trump got involved in the politics. This is a specific policy decision by your administration to release these men into the country. So what I'm saying to you, do you owe those families an apology?
Let me just say, first of all, those are tragic cases. There's no question about that. There's no question about that.
Whew. Do you owe those girls and their families an apology? Holy sh! I get it. It's hardball. Damn. Whew.
And I can't imagine the pain that the families of those victims have experienced for a loss that should not have occurred. So that is true. It is also true that if a border security had actually been passed 9 months ago, it would be 9 months that we would have had more border agents at the border, more support for the folks who are working around the clock trying to hold it all together.
Madam Vice President.
To ensure that no future harm would occur. And this election in 20 days will determine whether we have a president of the United States who actually cares more about fixing a problem, even if it is not to their political advantage in an election, because there was a solution, Brett.
Madam Vice President, it was a policy decision in the early part of your administration. I will let one of the mothers talk about it. Take a listen.
Because of the Biden.
Prepared, boy. Prepared. And the answers don't negate him playing the video. The answers don't negate his question. They're not combating it. Oh my goodness. This is, hey, I'm impressed so far, I must be honest. Right? Even how he led into this video. I mean, that's a master class. And a leading question that seems very, very genuine to get to this. And then pulling on heartstrings, right? Because this is Fox. So we understand that, generally speaking, Fox doesn't align with the Democrats. And obviously Kamala is here. But that setup, that was clean. That was clean.
Harris administration open border policies catch and release. They were enrolled in the Alternatives to Detention program. This meant that they were released into the United States. It was not even a full 3 weeks later that they would take my daughter, Jocelyn Nungare's life. I believe the Biden-Harris administration open border policies are responsible for the death of my daughter.
That's the early days. So do you owe them an apology is what I'm saying.
I will tell you that I am so sorry for her loss. I'm so sorry for her loss. Sincerely. But let's talk about what is happening.
See, that's one thing I advise. I'm like, okay. I remember I was talking to somebody on one of the panels. I said a thing that made sense in a line, and then they opened their opening statement with but then nothing they said refuted or disagreed with what I was saying. So I said, why did you open with but if you didn't disagree? Oh, sorry, it's a filler word, right? And I get it. That can happen, right? People are just accustomed. However, President of the United States said, I'm truly sorry for your loss. And I mean that sincerely, but seems like it essentially rebuts what was just said. Or the connotation is, hey, I get it, but I understand, but I'm sorry, but it lessens the impact of the statement before it. Let's see.
Right now with an individual who does not want to participate in solutions. Let's talk about that as well.
But do you want to answer
in all
her?
fairness, I told you, I feel awful for what she and her family have experienced.
During that time, you said...
So, I see what he did. He made sure to reiterate and give an opportunity to answer the actual question, which is, do you owe them an apology? I'm sorry for your loss is not an apology. It also doesn't implicate the person saying I'm sorry. Right? Now, is it a smart play, in my opinion, to not say, yes, I'm sorry, because then by proxy, you also agree that your policies made this happen. The policies that you said would have been good and prohibited said actions, or was a better immigration policy than what Trump initially had there. So I get why she can't say, yes, I'm sorry. However, you're dealing with real people in real lives. So oftentimes people will hear that and maybe put a point against her in that specific transaction they just had.
Repeatedly that the border was secure. When in your mind did it start becoming a crisis?
I think we've had a broken immigration system transcending, by the way, Donald Trump's administration, even before. Let's all be honest about that. I have no pride in saying that this is a perfect immigration system. I've been clear, I think we all are, that it needs to be fixed. We need more. I was just down at the border talking with border agents, and they will tell you, and I'm sure you probably, I know you investigate and you are a serious journalist, they will tell you, we need more judges. We need to process those cases faster. We need the support for those cases that should be prosecuted. They need more resources, and Congress ultimately is the only place that's going to get fixed, Brett.
Well,
that's how this system works.
That's the premise of this question. There were 90-plus executive orders that were rescinded in the first days. Many of those were Trump border policies. I'm not going to stay here because there's other things to talk about, but you frequently talked to the Border Patrol Union for support of that bipartisan bill, and they did. They supported it. But they also just endorsed Donald Trump and said, you've been, quote, a failure with border security. Why do you think they said that?
I think they're frustrated, and I get it. They want support. They want support, and that's what that border security bill would have done. These guys down at the border, these men and women, they're working hard. They're working around the clock. I get it.
There's a lot of people that look back at what you said in 2019 when you first ran for president. And there have been changes, and you've talked about some of them. When it comes to immigration, you supported allowing immigrants in the country illegally to apply for driver's license, to qualify for free tuition at universities, to be enrolled in free health care. Do you still support those things?
Listen, that was 5 years ago, and I'm very clear that I will follow the law. I have made that statement over and over again, and as Vice President of the United States, that's exactly what I've done, not to mention before.
If that's the case, you chose a running mate, Tim Walz, governor of Minnesota, who signed those very things into state law. So do you support that?
We are very clear, and I'm very clear, as is Tim Walz, that we must support and enforce federal law, and that is exactly what we will do.
Man. Jeez Louise, man. I don't even think y'all need my commentary for that. That exchange just did not go very well. And it started off poorly with saying the word prosecution in terms of different cases. Prosecution means that somebody is arrested and it seemingly needs to be convicted for a crime, right? I think a lot of this border policy, patrol, and etc. is the prevention of. But catch and release in itself literally lets them in illegally, right? Not following federal law. And then these things happen, but now we need to expedite prosecution, but it would be unnecessary if we had better border protection, border support, border policy. And then the running mate thing is a dagger.
So decriminalizing border crossings, like you said in 2019.
I do not believe in decriminalizing border crossings, and I've not done that as vice president. I will not do that as president.
So these are evolutions that you've had.
But let's be very clear. I'm the only person who's running for president who has prosecuted transnational criminal organizations, from the Sinaloa cartel to the Guadalajara cartel to people who have trafficked in guns, drugs, and human beings. I have spent a significant part of my career going after people who present a threat to the safety of the American people and cross our border with the intent of doing us harm and cross our border illegally. And I will do that work as vice president. I take that work quite seriously.
This is a time when voters, especially here in Pennsylvania, are inundated with commercials and ads. They just want it to stop because it's every commercial. But many of them add noise, but a few of them seem to break through. This particular one from the Trump campaign has gotten a lot of attention.
Kamala supports taxpayer-funded sex changes for prisoners.
Surgery.
For prisoners.
For prisoners. Every transgender inmate in the prison system would have access.
So are you still in support of using taxpayer dollars to help prison inmates or detained illegal aliens to transition to another gender?
I will follow the law, and it's a law that Donald Trump actually followed. You're probably familiar with, now it's a public report, that under Donald Trump's administration, these surgeries were available on a medical necessity basis to people in the federal prison system. And I think, frankly, that ad from the Trump campaign is a little bit of like throwing stones when you're living in a glass house.
The Trump aides say that he never advocated for that prison policy and no gender transition surgeries
you know what, you got to take responsible for what happened in your
presidency.
administration.
Yeah, no surgeries happened in his presidency.
It's in black and white.
Would you still advocate for using taxpayer dollars for gender reassignment surgeries?
I will follow the law, just as I think Donald Trump would say he did.
You would have a say as president.
The follow the law mantra that she's saying leaves me to feel, and I'm saying feel, right? Got to be careful, that the accountability is low. As long as this is what the law says, my opinion matters not. Okay, I understand this sentiment. However, we want to hear what you're willing to do, what you're willing to combat, what you're willing to change, what you're willing to stand on and speak up about. But, okay, fair. You're going to follow the law just like Trump did, right? That was in black and white. So that's what we go by. I understand it as a premise. But I think the reason why there's so many people, Trump supporters, especially initially, when he first got on the scene, because people want to hear the things that they thinking, that they saying around their kitchen tables. Following the law ain't one of them. Damn.
Like I said, I think he spent $20 million on those ads, trying to create a sense of fear in the voters because he actually has no plan in this election that is about focusing on the needs of the American people. Whereas, at $20 million on that ad, on an issue that, as it relates to the biggest issues that affect the American people, it's really quite remote. And again, his policy was no different. Look at where we are, though. On plans for the American people, I'm offering a plan to deal with affordable housing. I'm offering a plan to deal with what we need to do to strengthen small businesses, which are the backbone of America's economy. I am offering a plan that is about taking care of young parents and giving them the support they need. My plans for the economy will strengthen the economy, as have been reviewed by 16 Nobel laureates, Goldman Sachs, Moody's, and recently the Wall Street Journal, which have all studied our plans and have indicated my plans for our economy would strengthen our economy, his would make them weaker, would ignite inflation and invite a recession by the middle of next year. Those are the facts.
Why do you think more people say they trust him on the economy than they trust you?
I think that when you look at an analysis of our plan.
I have to point this out. Obviously, it was a deflection, and he took the bait, or maybe I think the fact that she deflected to a different topic may essentially prove his point, so he left it alone, because as you can see, his response is geared towards what she just presented. She's saying that is minuscule. The real things is what I'm focused on, and I'm going to do a great job at, better than Donald Trump. But when you look at the transgender things as an example, you had liberal states like Oregon, when the transgender athlete ran and won the state championship in track, they booed. Nobody applauded. When you seen the Bud Light campaign, they lost how much market share? 20% overnight. When you were at the Boston game, the Celtics game, or it was the Boston Red Sox game, the line for Modelo, I believe it was, or Coors Light, was out the door. The Bud Light line was empty. When Target had that campaign with the genderless clothing for the children and things of that nature, right? When it hit the southern states, that did not fly. It got boycotted. I didn't see any of that down here in Texas. None of it. When I went to DC, I did see it. But when I went to the big states down here in Texas, that got boycotted. There was no genderless LGBTQ section in the kids section down here. So I get it. We're saying like the money, the allocations, the economy, right? Those are all the buzzwords. But these are the things that you hear regular everyday people, because 90% of us aren't entrepreneurs, have conversations about. Transgenders reading in school, the things in Target, the Bud Light. There's a lot of energy around it. So I get it. Let's talk about something we would subjectively say is the real issues. But these are the things that people think about.
Plans for what we would do as president of the United States. It has been clear to those who study and understand how economic policy works that moving forward, because I do believe the American people are ready to turn the page on the divisiveness and the type of rhetoric that has come out of Donald Trump. People are ready to chart a new way forward, and they want a president who has a plan for the future and a plan that is sound and will strengthen our country. My plan for the economy does exactly that. His plan would be, again, to give tax cuts to billionaires and the biggest corporations in our country and blow up our deficit.
It's interesting you said turn the page, Madam Vice President. You were asked on 2 different shows last week what, if anything, you would do differently than President Biden. Here's what you said.
Would you have done something differently than President Biden during the past 4 years?
There is not a thing that comes to mind in terms of, and I've been a part of most of the decisions that have had impact.
Under a Harris administration, what would the major changes be, and what would stay the same?
Sure. Well, I mean, I'm obviously not Joe Biden.
I know.
And so that would be one change in terms of, but also I think it's important to say with, 28 days to go, I'm not Donald Trump.
So you're not Joe Biden, you're not Donald Trump, but nothing comes to mind that you would do differently?
Let me be very clear. My presidency will not be a continuation of Joe Biden's presidency. And like every new president that comes into office, I will bring my life experiences, my professional experiences, and fresh and new ideas. I represent a new generation of leadership. I, for example, am someone who has not spent the majority of my career in Washington, D.C. I invite ideas, whether it be from the Republicans who are supporting me, who were just on stage with me minutes ago, and the business sector, and others who can contribute to the decisions that I make about, for example, my plan for increasing the supply of housing in America and bringing down the cost of housing, addressing the issue of small businesses, which is about working with the private sector to bring more capital and access to capital to our small business leaders, including my plan for a $25,000 down payment assistance for first-time homebuyers and for small businesses, extending the tax deduction from $5,000 to $50,000.
We've heard a lot about those plans in recent days. Your campaign slogan is a new way forward, and it's time to turn the page. You've been vice president for 3.5 years. So what are you turning the page from?
Well, first of all, turning the page from the last decade in which we've been burdened.
When she initially started answering, I had to give her that she showed a little bit of strength when she actually said, listen, this will not be a continuation of Biden's presidency. I think that was a strong statement. It's just the clips. You didn't say that when you had an opportunity just a week ago. Nothing comes to mind that's going to change. So by proxy of that, it would stay the same, which would define it as a continuation. Damn.
With the kind of rhetoric coming from Donald Trump that has been designed and implemented to divide our country and have Americans literally point fingers at each other. Rhetoric and an approach to leadership that suggests that the strength of a leader is based on who you beat down instead of what we all know. The strength of leadership is based on who you lift up. The strength of an American president, which is one who understands that the vast majority of us have more in common than what separates us.
Madam Vice President, more than 70% of people
that is
tell
about turning the page on rhetoric that people are frankly exhausted of, Brett.
More than 70% of people tell the country is on the wrong track. They say the country is on the wrong track. If it's on the wrong track, that track follows 3.5 years of you being vice president and President Biden being president. That is what they're saying, 79% of them. Why are they saying that? If you're turning the page, you've been in office for 3.5 years.
And Donald Trump has been running for office.
But you've been the person holding the office.
Come on.
Madam
You
Vice
and I
President.
both know what I'm talking about. You and I both know what I'm talking about.
I actually don't. What are you talking about?
What I'm talking about is that over the last decade,
but
people
you're the
have
lever of
become.
power.
But listen, over the last decade, it is clear to me, and certainly the Republicans who are on stage with me, the former chief of staff to the president, Donald Trump, former defense secretaries, national security advisor, and his vice president, one, that he is unfit to serve, that he is unstable, that he is dangerous, and that people are exhausted with someone who professes to be a leader who spends full time demeaning and engaging in personal grievances and it being about him instead of the American people. People are tired of that.
If that's the case, why is half the country supporting him? Why is he beating you in a lot of swing states? Why, if he's as bad as you say, that half of this country is now supporting this person who could be the 47th president of the United States? Why is that happening?
This is an election for president of the United States. It's not supposed to be easy.
I know, but
it's not supposed to be. It is not supposed to be a cakewalk for anyone.
So are they misguided, the 50%? Are they stupid? What is it?
I would never say that about the American people. And in fact, if you listen to Donald Trump, if you watch any of his rallies, he's the one who tends to demean and belittle and diminish the American people. He's the one who talks about an enemy within, an enemy within, talking about the American people, suggesting he would turn the American military on the American people.
We asked that question to the former president today. Harris Faulkner had a town hall, and this is how he responded.
I heard about that. They were saying I was like threatening. I'm not threatening anybody. They're the ones doing the threatening. They do phony investigations. I've been investigated more than Alphonse Capone. He was the greatest gangster. No, it's true. No, but think of it. It's called weaponization of government. It's a terrible thing.
So,
Brett, I'm sorry, and with all.
Yeah, the excerpt. No, I think she. Obviously, you can see there's frustration and irritation, but at a point, you kind of let it out a little bit, right? I think that he definitely swinging, you know, and her defense isn't great, but at least I can hear a little bit. All right, yo, all right now, you know what I'm saying? Let's talk. She caught herself when she was saying Donald Trump's been campaigning, right? I think she's alluding to the fact that not just with the people, not just the commoners like me and whomever else may be watching, but inside the Congress, Senate, right? That's why she smirked and said, we both know what I'm talking about. You know, so she said it's been uphill fight after fight after fight trying to get things done. But with the divisive rhetoric and things of that nature, you know, that point when I consider it, it seems like there was an uptick, certainly, of just people being a little bit more emboldened to do the things, say the things, and maybe that's good. But people are saying things against one another, which would literally mean they would be dividing, right? So she makes that point. I can hear it and I can see it in a few different instances. That clip about what Trump just said, it was too short. It seems not that it's fake, but it's like condensed for a reason. He's like, yeah, I heard somebody say that. Well, the definitive answer would have proved the point a little bit more. So I think that was a miss with that clip. Let's see her response.
All due respect, that clip was not what he has been saying about the enemy within that he has repeated when he's speaking about the American people. That's not what you just showed.
Well, he was asked about that specific...
No, that's not what you just showed. In all fairness and respect to you,
that was the question that we asked him.
You didn't show that, and here's the bottom line. He has repeated it many times, and you and I both know that. And you and I both know that he has talked about turning the American military on the American people. He has talked about going after people who are engaged in peaceful protest. He has talked about locking people up because they disagree with him. This is a democracy. And in a democracy, the president of the United States, in the United States of America, should be willing to be able to handle criticism without saying he'd lock people up for doing it. And this is what is at stake, which is why you have someone like the former chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff saying what Mark Milley has said about Donald Trump being a threat to the United States of America.
He's quoted in the Bob Woodward book that way, yes. Let me ask you.
See, her response was strong there. And you know, he played that clip. He didn't automatically say this was never said. He's saying this is what he last said the last time we interviewed him, right? So the delivery of questions can allow for a specific type of answer. And you can cater a question to get a response, like he's been doing pretty brilliantly in this this interview. A few different times he had a clip queued up because it's almost like he could dictate or anticipate her answer. So you could argue the same is being done to get an answer that's more palatable depending on what you want to accomplish. But it's important to point out that he didn't refute the fact that those things were said or in some form or fashion.
To this, Madam Vice President, you call Donald Trump.
The significance
you
of that.
call Donald Trump. He's misguided. You say now he's unstable.
He is unstable, Brett.
He's not well. You say he's mentally not stable.
He's not stable.
Let me ask you this. You told many interviewers that Joe Biden was on his game, that ran around circles on his staff. When did you first notice that President Biden's mental faculties appeared diminished?
Joe Biden, I have watched from the Oval Office to the Situation Room, and he has the judgment and the experience to do exactly what he has done in making very important decisions on behalf of the American people.
There were no concerns raised?
Brett, Joe Biden is not on the ballot.
I understand.
And Donald Trump
but
is.
You talked about it.
And Donald Trump
After George Clooney said within a few minutes of talking to President Biden at a fundraiser that he thought this was not the same Joe Biden that we saw on the debate stage.
Donald Trump is on the ballot.
I understand. You met with him at least once a week for 3.5 years. You didn't have any concerns?
I think the American people have a concern about Donald Trump, which is why the people who know him best, including leaders of our national security community, have all spoken out. Even people who worked for him in the Oval Office, worked with him in the Situation Room, and have said he is unfit and dangerous and should never be president of the United States again, including his former vice president, which is why the job was open for him to choose another running mate. So that is a fact. That is a fact.
Madam Vice President, two more things. You were asked on 60 Minutes about...
I see it. The unstable thing can backfire. Because if you're around Biden, how can you not understand that he's losing or missing his faculties, that he's not processing information, that he can't keep up in real time? He's diminishing. If you see him every week, you can't make a judgment on that, but you can emphatically say that Donald Trump is unstable. I see what he did there.
The biggest threat that the world faces, that the U.S. faces, this is what you said.
Which foreign country do you consider to be our greatest adversary?
I think there's an obvious one in mind, which is Iran. Iran has American blood on their hands, okay? This attack on Israel, 200 ballistic missiles. What we need to do to ensure that Iran never achieves the ability to be a nuclear power, that is one of my highest priorities.
A number of experts thought you would say China. The FBI director had said that. But you said Iran. If that's the case, what do you say to critics who look at the actions of your administration and say you're not acting like Iran is the #1 threat?
Well, I will tell you most recently, whether it was in April or in October, and then several hours on each occasion that Iran posed a threat to Israel, I was there. Most recently in the Situation Room, in the most recent attack, working with the heads of our military and doing what America must always do to defend and to support Israel in its requirement to defend itself, and to give American support to be able to allow Israel to have the resources to defend itself against attack, including from Iran and Iran's terrorist proxies in the region.
Right.
And that is, and my commitment to that is unyielding and unwavering.
Critics just say that you either relaxed or failed to enforce sanctions on Iran, allowing all of this money to flow into Iran, like billions.
Let's go back to Donald Trump, who pulled out of a deal that would have actually put Iran in check.
The estimates in billions.
It was during Donald Trump's
that
administration that
Iran regime.
That we had an American military base that was attacked, where American soldiers suffered traumatic brain injuries, and Donald Trump dismissed them as headaches. Not to mention how Donald Trump has treated and talked about America's military and military service people, calling them suckers and losers,
Hamas,
has diminished the significance.
We're talking over each other. I apologize.
Well, I would like that we would have a conversation that is grounded in full assessment of the facts, which includes, I think this interview is supposed to be about the choices that your viewers should be presented about this election, and the contrast is important.
Yes, ma'am.
And on the subject of Iran, I am offering what should be an important contrast that is presented for folks to make a decision that they feel.
Who look at what the administration did and say and think differently. Madam Vice President, they're wrapping me very hard here.
Iran, biggest threat. You showed the money in billions, right? If it's the biggest threat, it should be declining, essentially. I don't know if that is a determining factor, right? Because even if she says China, look at the products that come in, TikTok, right? But the potential infiltration, right, that we said we've received from the Chinese government. So even if she says China, right, we still don't deny them. Do we have the tariffs on them to pay? Are those enacted yet? Are we barring them from bringing in goods and things of that nature? So I think either one you pick, right, you can make that similar argument. Why they getting so much money from us, or why we giving so much money to them, or buying things, or in debt, if they're our biggest threat. So even if they would say China, the argument regarding monies, I think it's the same for China or Iran.
I hope you got to say what you wanted to say about Donald Trump. There are a lot of things
There's more to say. I have
there
much more to
are
say,
a lot of
actually.
things that people want to learn about you and your policies, and that's why
I invite everyone to go to KamalaHarris.com, and you will see that I have 80 pages of policies that are quite comprehensive and should be accessible to anyone who would like to read them. And it includes what I intend to do about affordable housing, what I intend to do about small businesses, what I do.
And that's why we invited you here, to see where you were in 2019 and where you are now.
America's military and ensure we have the most lethal and best fighting force in the world.
Madam Vice President,
and
they're giving me a hard rap
Well,
here.
I thank you for the time.
I thank you for the time.
It's good to meet you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hey, Sean Hannity.
Man, I think that was intense. I think that it was hardball after hardball after hardball. I think he was throwing strikes. At the end, regarding that particular question, starting with gives you the time to think. You remember back in grade school, he was like 5 plus 6. Everybody like 5 plus 6, 11. But you repeat it so you have time to answer, right? It's a little bit of a stall. What she was saying wasn't coming out as cleanly as the other things. I think she had to think about that answer as she was giving it, right? So it shows a little level of unpreparedness, right? She had moments where she showed some strength, but I think that it was pretty masterful in terms of the interview, and his disposition, right? I think lends itself to that style with the hardballs because it doesn't seem like he's over pursuing anything. He was very good at saying, okay, well, this happened, blah, 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 but now this, right? So he would make sure to reiterate his point or his question or the lack of an answer before moving on ever so slightly. And those are the type of things that your subconscious catches. He would make sure to reiterate that she did not answer or wasn't concise and direct with an answer. His interview style makes the deflection clear, and he's even great at being polite, right? Seeming polite, coming across as such, right? Ma'am is brilliant, right? Ma'am is brilliant, right? They were talking over each other the entire time. He made sure to get it in at the end to say, we're talking over each other. I apologize. So even when it's ending, you're like, okay, well, see, yeah, he's trying to be polite, Kamala, etc. So I see it, man. He did a hell of a job. What he was aiming to paint, I think he did it. I think he did it, man. Hey, she's brave for going on there. I gotta give her that. But man, that was a tough one. That was a tough one. Right now, the race is damn near 50-50. Trump up 2 points. What's next, man? I love y'all. I appreciate y'all. Be safe and do the right thing, man. Like, share, subscribe. Tell a friend to tell a friend. And I'm out.